Let's talk about digital identity, the podcast connecting identity and business. I am your host, Oscar Santolaya. Hello and thanks for joining. Today we are going to hear how mobile operators around the world have joined forces to build a standard which brings not only strong authentication but also other services that help us to protect our digital identity. So my guest today is Niklas Bergvall. He is chair of the Mobile Connect interest group at GSMA. He leads the international Mobile Connect community, developing and commercializing new identity capabilities using Mobile Connect. The Mobile Connect community engages over 70 mobile operators in over 30 countries, countless service providers, reaching over 500 million people worldwide. With over 20 years of experience in the mobile ecosystem, Niklas has an exceptional understanding of the key challenges being faced when launching products and services internationally. Prior to the GSMA, Niklas launched and managed a number of global business-to-business products and services in various roles at Vodafone, Oxford Instruments, and Europolitan. Hi, Niklas.
Hi, Oscar. Very nice to be here in this podcast, and thank you for inviting me to talk a little bit more about identity and Mobile Connect specifically.
Thanks to you. It's great really talking with you. We really want to know more about how Mobile Connect is doing right now. What are the things coming during this new year and ahead? But first, I would like to hear from you. How did you join? What was the journey to come to this world of digital identity?
From the GSMA, it was really looking at our members, and our members' networks, as you know, really underpin and help drive the digital economy and its associated services. I mean, as we've seen, these services bring new challenges for businesses to protect customer identities and customer data, which is both complex and costly. So that was really the background to digital identity becoming a strategic priority for the GSMA board a while back. We believed then, and we still do, that network operators have unique insights and unique capabilities that can be brought to bear to make digital identity better. If we go from a journey where we started thinking about this to today, where we have more than 4.5 billion internet users globally accessing services, transacting personal data and money, the digital identity market is estimated to reach a value of something like $13 billion by 2024, so in just 4 years' time. So there's clearly an opportunity for lots of organizations, not the least for network operators and other GSMA members.
When Mobile Connect was created and how this originated?
So, I mean, if you look at the history, GSMA Identity Program and its participating operator partners started working together about 5 years ago to deliver Mobile Connect, a mobile identity-based service which works by matching users with their mobile phone numbers. And we really started with this notion: digital identity is really important. At the moment, we are not doing enough there, so let's start by building a standard that we can corral together as an industry. It now offers a wide range of practical use cases, such as being able to easily register and log into websites and apps, to authorizing transactions and sharing specific set of personal data with online services. Over the years, for example, mobile operators here in the UK, where I'm now based, offer attribute-based identity services to some of the biggest financial merchants in the countries like American Express or HSBC. In the US, this autumn, we saw mobile operators launch Zenki to allow users to log into their apps with their smartphone. Also in other countries such as Russia, India, Spain, and Germany, mobile operators have all come together, working together to bring identity services to the ecosystem. So that's really, where we started. We looked at that there is a strategic opportunity. We then sort of said, let's create some standards around this and specification, which is Mobile Connect. And then over the years, we've seen adoption and let's say the manifestation of that those strategies are being put in place and can be of great use to the ecosystem.
Yes, you already started mentioning there are several use cases, and today different use cases have been implemented, deployed in different countries. Coming a little bit back on the concept itself, how would you describe Mobile Connect to an end user, to an individual?
For an end user, if you look at some of the authentication services and what service providers and end users are struggling with is the need to manage risk or prevent the wrong person to get hold of data or transact on your behalf, as well as create a simple and nice experience for you as a user. Friction-free is often mentioned. And if we look, for instance, at China Mobile, they're using a service from Mobile Connect called Verified MSI-SDN Share. Basically, China Mobile shares the MSI-SDN with the service provider of the device connected to the service provider. And the SP then uses that MSI-SDN, that phone number, as an identifier to give access to the correct user account. In this case, the user doesn't really see Mobile Connect at all. All they are seeing is that they are being logged in and they get hold of the right data. And obviously, they also take confidence that this data is not being given to someone else. But there you have a friction-free experience. And we've seen some tremendous numbers in this, over the last 2 years. China Mobile have grown transactions per day with over 800%. And they're now doing 1.1 billion daily transaction, powering an ecosystem in China with over 300 commercial partners, enabling over secure authentication on over 3,000 applications, including 82 of the top 200 apps and 6 out of the 10 top applications. So clearly, great use for the ecosystem partners, great service from China Mobile. But as an end user, you don't really see it or experience that this is Mobile Connect. All you're seeing is that you're being simply logged in. In other countries, when you look at the authentication services, you might see a SIM applet, for instance. The operators in Spain have launched, and you click OK to log in and so forth. So there it's the clear user experience, and it's clear that this is an authentication service called Mobile Connect provided by the operator.
And now that you mentioned this, Spain, I have seen that one in Spain, so it's very, very simple. It's no password, so that's one of the biggest benefits, authentication without passwords.
Absolutely. Authentication without passwords. And it's really coming to what are we trying? What is everyone working really hard in the ecosystem to create friction-free journeys that allow for you to place the trust in the service provider, to trust them with your data, with your money, or whatever it is that you're transacting as an end user.
Yeah, exactly. I can see a huge potential because mobile operators are big. You know the exact number, but a huge number of billions of people already have a mobile subscription, something that many people don't have, like a bank account, for instance. But they have a mobile subscription, and in this mobile subscription, the operator already has verified their identity, their personal identity, and has some personal information that helps to do these services, like a strong authentication based on verified identity or the other services you mentioned, the one in China, for instance. Could you tell us now, how is the adoption worldwide nowadays? Let's say in terms of countries or continents, what would you say?
So at the moment, the numbers we're tracking, we got about 70 mobile network operators that have implemented Mobile Connect, residing in approximately 40 markets. Obviously, they're at various stages in, let's say, maturity. A number of success stories are emerging, and I think there are a number of factors that are driving how quickly the operators are able to march in their individual market. And one of the key things we've noted within the GSMA, in order for these types of solutions to really get traction in a particular market, it's important for the operators. Typically you would have 3-4 mobile operators in a country, that those operators are working together so that for a service provider, you're able to authenticate the entire user base in a consistent manner. Otherwise, it's much harder to really drive adoption and a lot of usage.
Is that a requirement? Let's say if one mobile operator in one country wants to start using Mobile Connect, is a requirement that all the other operators in the country have to also use Mobile Connect or make agreements?
No, I wouldn't say it's a requirement as such, but we see that typically in markets where you have, let's say, competition between operators and they are about equal size, it helps if they are working in concert. Maybe not all of them have to launch on the same day, but if there's a roadmap to get, let's say, 60-70% of the users in that market up to a mobile authentication solution or an attribute service or something, that helps to really create that marketplace. But we have outliers like, for instance, Turkcell have been very successful with their Fast Connect implementation, fast login based on Mobile Connect. And they are now, processing transaction of well over 30 million per month. They are doing that across the ecosystem, and they've opened it up for service providers. Turkcell as well, they are a very strong operator with the outspoken ambition to become more than a mobile operator and a digital service provider. They have music services and video services and so forth, where they are using their fast login service as well, obviously driving transaction, training users, and therefore creating more value for other service providers to take up their fast login solution.
Yeah, sure. I understand that it's not required that all the operators have to agree to implement Mobile Connect. But yeah, I understand that it's in their best interest of one operator that also some of the other operators at least also implement it, at least are in the roadmaps. So the ecosystem, the market is significant in a country, right? So I would like to hear now a bit more in detail, some concrete examples in some countries, how some operators in one country have implemented some of the services and how others in different countries, different services of Mobile Connect.
Okay. I think I've already referenced, China Mobile. I think that really is something to pose for thought. The fact that a service such as verified MSISDN share can get up to 1.1 billion daily transaction, and the growth they've had, 800% over the last 2 years to get to that stage and still growing. It just shows this need for friction-free and secure user journeys. And we're seeing now that the European operators across a number of countries are looking to enable those types of services. And we can talk a little bit about, what's going to happen next later. But I think that's a key success, I think, for just to proving that the case for Mobile Connect. I think another thing that's very, very interesting and topical in Europe today, and it relates to strong customer authentication and PSD2, some regulation that the European Union is driving in the financial services space, where a number of banks now are looking at how can we harden or improve on SMS OTP, and there we're seeing the UK operators have launched a service called Account Takeover Protection or ATP. In this service, they share the information when the last SIM swap happened on that particular MSISDN. So if you've received a new SIM card, basically. Why is this important? I think across a number of countries, not only in Europe, but across the world, fraudsters through social engineering are tricking mobile operators to hand out a SIM card to them. And obviously with that SIM card and other information, they are now able to transact on someone's, let's say, bank account. And with the new SIM card, they can then collect the SMS OTP and transfer money for that user illegitimately. Obviously, for the bank to find out what the date of the last SIM swap gives them an indication. Is this a high-risk transaction or is it a low-risk transaction for that type of account takeover? And the UK, we're seeing promising signs there, and as I said, the European operators are now looking to roll that type of attribute service out across the continent. And this in combination with the service that China Mobile has rolled out, verified MSISDN, share or match, those two services together can really, let's say, tighten up on secure authentication when you're looking at some ways to replace or harden SMS OTP.
About this, the one in UK that you just mentioned, this Mobile Connect account takeover protection. So who offers to whom? So for instance, the operator offers this service to the financial institutions. That is the who?
Yes. So I mean, the way you look at the ecosystem, obviously the banks are large enough to buy directly from the operators in the UK, but typically they would go through some type of channel partner. Not talking specifically about this solution or any particular bank, but in the Mobile Connect interest group, we got companies such as Payphone, Boko, Bix Telesign, Infobip, who are all working to aggregate these type of attribute services from all operators, and then as a single point provide this to a financial institution. And that's typically what we're seeing happening here in the UK in terms of how the banks and the financial services vertical is consuming these services from the operators. It's very similar to the messaging and how SMS is being consumed by banks for SMS OTP.
Correct. Yes. Other countries, for instance?
On the authentication side, I've also touched on Turkcell before. And I think that is really a case just showing how an operator is saying, we want to be more than an operator and drive, let's say, become a digital service player, and that identity has a place in our strategy to become just that. Another example, I think, again, I think I'll come back to the UK, but Three here integrated with Boko to offer some fraud prevention capabilities to service providers such as MoneyGram and money transfer service. And in this case, new customers that register to MoneyGram would check the information such as name and address with the records that the mobile operator Three has on file for that number. And this has kind of case study has shown that the KYC data help MoneyGram to comply with their own KYC regulations and prove identity with the customers. And at the same time, it proved the case for mobile attributes for Three.
In the case of using Mobile Connect for authentication, you mentioned Turkcell as it seems to be one of the best implementations of Mobile Connect for authentication. In that case, is it because Turkey doesn't have strong authentication methods, or there are others competing in that country? So how is the scenario in strong authentication in Turkey, and how Turkcell found this niche?
If you want take-up of users or consumers to start using your authentication service, it's so important to have the services that are of interest to those consumers. And Turkcell, working hard to become a digital service providers and having all of those services, music and TV and so forth, they were able to quickly connect their identity efforts with great services which users and consumers wanted to consume and needed to authenticate to consume. So they had that, since they act as a service provider themselves and an identity provider and an operator, they had all of that in-house, and then they were also able to attract external service providers to use their authentication service. I think in some countries where you're launching an operator identity service and the only thing that you're being able to authenticate against is the operator's internal portal for services, as an end user, as a consumer, you don't go in often enough there to really warrant you learning and using in earnest a new authentication solution. So it's much harder. And without consumers being trained to authenticate, it's also much harder to attract service providers to add your authentication solution as one of the ways that they allow their consumers to authenticate on their sites.
Yes. No, it's clear, at least to me, that in the case of Turkcell, they invested a lot in creating services, variety of services, because that is what people really want, are they buying services. and they added the identity as part of the portfolio. So definitely a very good example.
Yeah, I think, Oscar, it may be that you and I and some of the listeners of this podcast, they are interested in pure play identity. For most of the world, it's just a necessary evil to get to the service you want to access and also to protect your data. But it's not something that you just try out or play with. You simply just accept it's there and you want it to be easy and reasonable.
Yeah, exactly. I think most of the people are not trying. Okay, let's try the 10 coolest authentication methods, right? Nobody does that. People are trying apps.
It's a very niche segment.
I guess a few guys will do it, but not many. Yeah, that's correct. Many people are trying all the time new services, new apps. That's what the majority of people are doing. That's true. It's selling observation you have done. What about for service providers who might be listening to this, organizations who are using some authentication methods, some strong, some not so strong, but might consider using Mobile Connect now that they're listening to us? How in concrete organizations can benefit with having Mobile Connect as a authentication method?
It really comes down to the kind of digital experience that you're looking to create for your users and consumers, and what's getting in the way of making those experiences amazing at the moment. And since we're talking about Mobile Connect, particularly when it comes to logging in and using and protecting the services and the data in that. So I think I've highlighted that with let's say some of the success cases and examples. What some service provider have found really appealing with operator and network data is that services can be designed with little or no impact to the user experience, as well as reduce the risk of fraud. So you have an ability to reduce friction and reduce the risk of fraudulent access to services. I think that's really something to consider. And I mean, in Europe now, we're seeing momentum amongst all of the operators across the continent to either launch or they are in the process of launching identity services such as verified MSI-SDN and A2P. Again, just to make sure that it's clear, verified MSI-SDN lets a service provider request the operator to match the mobile number associated with the IP address of the SP's users, the mobile number that the SP has on file. And once you have that match as an SP, you can then say, now I know which user is browsing into my portal and can open up the services without the user having to do something. So this can be used as the single authentication, or it can be used alongside, let's say, the usual or let's say authentication ways that you have already put in place, such as a password and username. And A2P, again, to get the information of when the last SIM change took place, to be able to assess the risk that this mobile number might have been taken over by a fraudster, and then have a slightly different journey if you believe there might be a risk for that. The ones who are in Europe, I would say it's worthwhile to discuss with your operators or potentially channel partners such as Bocchio Payphone, Idemia, Callsign, and Bix Telesign about what are the new attributes that are coming out here that we should potentially be considering in the digital markets. For your listeners in the US who are looking at this, these types of services, verified MSI-SDN and KYC and account takeover protection, have been available in the States for some time, and we now believe that you will be able to access similar type of services from the MNOs here in Europe. So that means that you can bring over some of those learnings and experiences created for American users over to Europe.
And now, as you mentioned, how not only the operators are the ones who offer these services because they are distributors. Could you tell me what is the best way if someone is from some country where Mobile Connect is less developed, or the operator is already working on that and might have some service, but it's difficult to find out about that. So what is the best way if maybe you're a service provider in a country where you haven't heard too much about Mobile Connect? The best way is to contact to the operator, or whom to contact?
You can contact operators if you have a contact. If you're already using, let's say, SMS services and you're buying it from some of the channel partners, that is probably a quicker route to get access. Typically, where we're seeing the operators, this kind of resides either in their business unit for corporate services, or it resides in carrier services. And either way, it can be slightly difficult for a service provider to find the right contact. And a lot of the operators are using channel partners, and I mentioned a few of them, like Payphone, Infobip, Boku, and Bix, and Telesign. They are probably the ones that are already selling SMS and other messaging services to you today. So this could be a way to extend that relationship and consume a little bit more from those players. However, if you do end up not finding the right contact, you're always welcome to browse into GSMA, and you'll find us there under Mobile Connect GSMA or Identity GSMA, and you can send us a message, and we'll do our best to connect it to the relevant players in the countries where you have interest.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. Yeah, but it makes sense. The channel partners, such as the one who provide SMS services or message services, are, of course, most likely good channels to find more information about Mobile Connect in every country. So if you'd like to say something else about Mobile Connect?
Well, I think, it's always worth plugging a little bit the Mobile Connect interest group that you introduced in the beginning of this call, which I chair. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's a forum which is open for all GSMA members, operators, as well as associate members to basically share, collaborate, and learn about what the community is doing about in identity. We run our online collaboration. We have monthly calls, and we organize 2 summits every year. So for those of you who are members in the GSMA, feel free to contact us and join the group.
Okay, excellent. Nicholas, now could you finally give us a tip for anybody how to protect our digital identities?
The rule that I try to live by is never to pick up unsolicited messages. Mm-hmm. If it's not been initiated by myself, I simply don't engage, and that's helped to protect my identity so far. So that's something that I would always encourage, my family members and others to abide by.
Yeah, be very suspicious about any unsolicited message, whatever the channel it comes.
Exactly, Oscar. And do you have any final questions, final thoughts?
No, I think it has been very, very educational. The many things about the Mobile Connect that I didn't know, and I know it's interesting to share with us, with our audience. It's an standard UbiSecure has been working together also for a few years, and yeah, it's interesting to see how things are being implemented in other continents. So yeah, thanks a lot for sharing this with us. Could you finally tell us how we can find even more information about Mobile Connect?
Yes, and thanks again, Oscar, for inviting us to talk about identity. I've really enjoyed our conversation. So if you want to find out more about Mobile Connect and the identity efforts that the GSMA is driving, please put this in any search engine as GSMA Identity or GSMA Mobile Connect, and you'll find our pages. There you'll have contact details and a bit more information about our program and how we work. And don't be a stranger. Feel free to get in touch. We love to hear from the community and to help drive the digital identity agenda.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Nicholas, for this very interesting conversation, for sharing everything that's going on in Mobile Connect, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk About Digital Identity, produced by UbiSecure. Stay up to date with episodes at ubisecure.com/podcast, or join us on Twitter at UbiSecure and use the hashtag LTADI. Until next time,